And we're now live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
I'm Mike Martine.
We're going to be talking tonight about Survivor Second Chance Episode 3. And so this was a good episode in terms of crazy things happening.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating to just watch how Abby just blows through the game of everybody else like a wrecking ball.
Yeah. I mean, in an odd way, you could say that she's in control of the game right now.
Yeah. But she's
not a decisive control, but she is controlling the decisions.
Yeah, she's in control the way a thunderstorm is when it cancels a baseball game. I mean, it's like, technically it's true, and yet there's no actual intentionality there between the cause and the effect, where there's an intent to produce an effect, and then that's what happens. It's more just like she is doing stuff that everybody else has to deal with. So I don't know. I'm increasingly having mixed feelings. Certainly after feeling briefly sorry for her last time, I'm kind of not anymore. Just in the sense that my first reaction of just feeling irritated by her, and also just imagining how difficult it would probably be for me to deal with her in person. That has resurged compared to any feeling of empathy.
Yes.
To her.
In agreement.
Yeah. One of the things I listened to an interview with PG done after she was eliminated, and one thing that she mentioned that was an interesting detail that was from something back in episode 1 was that she apparently was the one who told Abby to go check her bag, because so it was exactly what she had explained in the show, which was they were initially all given a bag, but with no name tags. And so they had all talked about putting the name tags they had from another thing on their bags so that everyone would know whose bag was whose.
Right.
And so when she was going to get a bag, she saw one hanging up with no name tag on it, assumed it was unclaimed, and took it. Later, they're all building the shelter when Abby starts going around asking everybody, have you seen my bag? Have you seen my bag? It was hanging up right there. And PG, knowing that that's where she got the one that she had claimed, said, oh, you know what? It might be in mine. I might have accidentally grabbed yours. You want to go check it. And so that happened. And then it still, once finding her bracelet there, Abby still reacted the way that we saw, which is to go and talk to everybody else about, it's weird and interesting, isn't it, that PG would have my bracelet in her bag.
Yes. Makes you, it's very strange.
Yeah. So that kind of just makes it even worse, I think, because if there was anything suspicious going on, she's the one that suggested to you that she might have taken it out accidentally. It's not like you found it and found out her secret. Anyway, though, at the same time, it just goes to show you that I think whenever you have a group of people that has someone like her in it, just whoever ends up drawing her attention gets the focus of her energy. And I think it's one of those things where there might be a tendency for people to want to try to get back, get the tribe to be peaceful again by eliminating one or the other of the two people that are fighting, right? But the problem with someone like Abby is that, yeah, okay, maybe PG is the current target of her craziness right now, But she's not going to calm down with PG gone. She's just going to refocus on someone else.
Yes.
That's what she did the last time she was on.
Right. And, you know, as frustrating as it can be, though, you have to admit that PG did not handle this correctly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, honestly, it is stunning that a tribe that had a 4-2 majority ended up making, like, what a meltdown. Like, it was ridiculous that they were even having any of those conversations. And so, and I put that on all four of them. And so certainly PG contributes there. Abby is already crazy. We can talk about that. But then Jeff Varner and Wu also completely dropped the ball.
Probably Varner more so than Wu. Wu, I don't want to say Wu gets a pass just because he's kind of like sort of happy-go-lucky, but he didn't do anything as like
certainly
bad as the other three.
Yeah. I agree. And so the fault on him is really only in failing to stop everybody else from melting down.
Yes.
But yeah, just like it's kind of stunning how they took solid numbers and then just threw them in the ocean in favor of what? It's not clear what any of them thought they were gaining with that. But anyway, good on Savage and Tasha.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing that what they managed to pull off there. And I'm not sure what percentage we want to give them the credit for that and what percentage is just they got lucky because of these particular people being primed for a crack up, but worked out in their favor.
Yeah, I'll give them a little bit of credit because it's, I feel like it's in a weird way, it's similar to like stuff that I do at work. Like, we do a lot of things with the intention of like, selling tickets to sporting events, right? And we know that when a team is playing well, that helps. But what we do is we put ourselves in a position so that when the team is doing well, that we can capitalize on it. And if the team's not doing well, it mitigates the damage. That's our job. If we just say if the team wins, we sell out, that's not true. Like, it doesn't just automatically happen. We have to do a lot of work. This is very similar. Like, they put themselves in a position trying to mitigate the damage, and then they were prepared. So as soon as the opportunity came available, they had set everything up to allow for it to happen. So I want to give them the credit for that. Like, how much percentage you give on that? The weight is still probably heavier towards the fact that there was that meltdown on the other tribe and they got lucky, but they did everything that they needed to do. They executed properly so that they could take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Varner survived out of just sheer dumb luck. Because
I mean, that's where I put that fault on PG.
Yeah.
You could have just let it ride and just said, you know what, he messed up. Let's get this done. Let's just make everybody happy. Instead, she went and poked the bear and Abby, and that's what happened.
Yep. So in any case, if we go back to the beginning of the episode, we started off with coming back to camp from Tribal Council. Spencer reiterates that he's sincere about his desire to up his social game, to stay humble and remember the lessons from that Tribal Council and not just go back to the old patterns. We have Terry talking about how he feels like he's gone from the bottom of the tribe to now being on the top with no fear. Spencer will still be next, but life is good. We got this under control now, which of course is like, that's classic producer editing for here. Let's have someone say everything's going perfectly, just as we cut to something that's gonna mix it all up. So that's really all we got before going to the beach where they had the tribe mix up. One of the things Jeff Probst has said about this change this time is kind of what we talked about last time, which is just that, at a certain point you run out of new twists to do. So you have to just, so there's an element of just trying to keep things fresh with things that you haven't done over and over. And in this context, what he said about this one is that they wanted to make decisions that would encourage people to have to play hard. So in making things that would make people have to scramble and not get comfortable is what they're going for with this kind of a twist. And I think it works in that context.
Yeah, I know we discussed how we would respond once it had happened, and I so far am happy with it. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it detracted from. I think that you got to give the producers some credit in the editing. It didn't detract from our ability to get to know what was going on at each camp, which was one of the concerns, which we maybe didn't articulate, but that was one that I definitely had. Mm-hmm. I feel like they did it. I'm glad they did it early. I know we talked like, why are they doing it so early? Is this? And I think I even joked, it's like, maybe it's because they want people like Spencer to be around and they don't just want them on the, so they pulled the trigger quickly. But now that I saw how it developed, it makes sense why they did it now, because it means that each tribe is large enough to have a good dynamic going on. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to see 6 people maneuver.
Yeah.
If it's less than that, it across all tribes, then it gets a little sparse, Mm-hmm. It's a little bit, you have less people you have to convince to do what you want. The majority.
I agree. I think if they want to do a 2 to 3 split, you have to do it early when you have enough people to still have each tribe be interesting.
Yep. And so, now I didn't necessarily pick up on that until I actually saw it in action. It did play out well, and it's not a thing I say do every season, because then it's not that interesting, and then everybody plays a little too cautious until you get to this. But to have it as a new thing, I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And also one interesting element is that one of the 3 is going to have to go to a brand new beach and start all over from scratch and build a whole new shelter and everything. Kind of sucks for them. But in any case, the new...
Or maybe not, because then they can bond they can basically rebuild a new tribe the way that new tribes are built.
Yeah, there's something to that. Although in this context, it doesn't seem like it worked out that way for them.
It did not.
So the new tribe divisions, we have the new Bayon tribe, which is the Magenta Buffs. And that's Spencer, Kimmy, Stephen, Jeremy, Kelly Wigglesworth, and Monica. The new Takeo, which is the Teal Buffs. And that's Keith, Cass, Joe, Sierra, Terry, and Kelly Wentworth. And then the new tribe, Angkor, in yellow, with Wu, Jeff Verner, PG, Andrew Savage, Tasha, and Abby. So in our little immediate reactions, Joe says he thinks they've got a great team. And Andrew over on Angkor says that the swap is devastating. And in both contexts, we can understand why they would each say that. Andrew in particular, because it's like, I had a solid alliance, and now I am outnumbered 2-1.
Yep.
Yeah. Spencer is happy to have the dynamic mixed up a little bit, because even though he was saved this last time, he knew he was still likely to be targeted next. So any opportunity to change that up a little bit is positive for him.
Yeah, I mean, I know he made some changes and was going to start befriending people and all that kind of stuff, but he knew it might be too little too late, or I'm going to say too little too late, maybe just too late.
Yeah. So our first scene with Angkor, We have Wu with the other 3 from the previous Takeo tribe talking about, hey, you guys, we got 4. Let's stick together. Let's not do anything crazy. Let's just target Savage and Tasha. And
hold on real quick.
Okay.
I just texted you.
My phone is not near me.
It's, sorry. 20 to 25 minutes from being done, whenever you want to put it in. So it's 15 minutes, it has to be wiped in olive oil, 15 minutes in the oven, 5 minutes to rest, maybe 18 minutes in the oven.
Wiped in olive oil?
Like brushed.
Live podcasting.
Yeah. Well, it didn't help. All those instructions that I just gave, I had texted to her, but her phone's dead.
Oh, wow.
So I had tried to, mitigate, but I knew that was information she needed.
Yeah. So in any case, they had a plan. They had the numbers, but even still, Tasha was optimistic. She talks about, I'm not done yet. If anyone can survive this, I can. And I liked her attitude. So we went over to the new Takeo Beach, and Terry got an interesting, we would have thought that he would be one of the guys to really not be happy with how the swap turned out, because he was at the top where he was, and now he is in a numbers minority in the new Takeo tribe. But he isn't worried because he thinks their tribe is so strong that they won't ever lose a challenge, and so the numbers don't matter.
Yep.
And it is interesting. One of the things that came up a little bit later, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit now, the interesting balance of knowing that if you have a smaller number of your old alliance on your new tribe, that means it's a larger number elsewhere. And that's actually part of what I guess Tasha and Savage try to present as their case later, is saying, even though you have the majority in this smaller group, our group still has the majority in the larger group, and we're prepared to go back to them.
With you, and we're willing to bring you along. Yeah. Right.
And so it is interesting that's just a dynamic that has to stay in play, even when we talk about the relative majority or minority in each new tribe. But in any case, he's not worried. That camp decides to cook a chicken to celebrate. And Kelly Wentworth gets to work throwing Terry under the bus aggressively before the challenge even. It's kind of interesting that she made that move so strongly even before the challenge happened.
Yeah. It was an interesting the way that they both handled that. Probably because they probably both sense the same thing from the rest of the tribe, which is that they're a tribe that likes to win. Mm-hmm. And that's what he was sensing. These are strong players who like to win. So Terry was reading that as, great, I can fit in with that. I want to win. We probably will continue to win. And if we don't, then what he maybe didn't say to the camera is the first person that's going to go is going to be Kelly, because this is a tribe that wants to win and I'm a competitor.
Yeah.
And Kelly probably senses the exact same thing and says, oh, this is a strong tribe that wants to win challenges. I'm going to be the first target between me and Terry in that numbers game. And if I don't make a move now, then I'm going to be scrambling. So
yeah,
it's better for me to make a move now. So I'm okay with her. I mean, she was maybe a little aggressive about how much she went after him. But the idea of trying to establish yourself as the one to keep if they lose, when it's that sort of tribe, and you're the weaker person of the two, when it's a sort of I don't want to say, it's not a macho tribe. They're just a very championship oriented, that's just how most of them think. And
alphas.
Yeah. alphas regardless of, gender. And so she's like, Terry is definitely the favorite over her. So you need to start making your inroads before it's too late. And so I'm okay with making those moves. The aggressiveness, yeah, I mean, sure, leave it on the table, see what happens. So I'm not too worried about her. I mean, I can deal with what she did. I think that's a fun play.
Yeah, and it's true that, even though I think my first instinct was, why would you do this before even the challenge when you don't even know that you might have to do it? But it's also true that if she waits until after the challenge and if they had lost and were going to tribal council, at that point, it could be read as, well, you're going to say anything now. Whereas if she's saying it before, then it kind of becomes more inherently trustworthy, or it has that perception because there isn't this desperation attached to it.
Especially in that tribe. That's why it works, because this is a tribe that doesn't expect to lose the challenge.
It's
so
also sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so if you're making those moves before that happens, no one's looking at it and saying, oh, she's already prepared for when we lose a challenge, because they don't think they're going to lose the challenge. So
what I was going to say is it's also true that she really was never allied with Terry. I mean, she ended up voting with the majority to vote out Shireen, but only just because she sensed that way it was where the wind was blowing, not because she was really on their side. It was more just I had to abandon that sinking ship, and now I'm on the deck of a ship that I'm not as happy with. And so now that there's been a mix-up, she's maybe feeling like, I don't especially feel like I need to stay loyal to them. Why should I?
Also true.
So there's a lot to be said for that. And regardless, we didn't see any like payoff for that this time. So we'll see what sort of crops she reaps from these seeds. But I like that she's playing. You know what I mean? She's definitely making moves. And so essentially the big point that she's trying to suggest to everybody is that Terry is the one that has been looking for the idol for hours and hours. The one tricky thing with that is that since we know that's not really true, they might realize, they might hear her say that and then not see him bear out that behavior.
Right.
But we shall see how that goes.
Unless that is true and we just never have seen it because it wasn't relevant to what we were. I don't think it was, but you always have to be a little bit cautious with that. So meanwhile, over at the new Bion tribe, Steven is very happy now that it's not Camp Macho anymore. Although I have to say that he doesn't seem to be changing up any of the behaviors that kind of excluded him a bit before. He seems like he's kind of doing the same thing there. Yes.
Spencer, I like that Spencer is trying, but there's definitely, I think, some humor, and Dalton Ross pointed this out too, made a point of this, but there's some humor in the idea that what Spencer is saying is, I need to be more open, more emotional, and show these people that I have feelings. So I'm going to tell a story about how my girlfriend said that she loved me and I didn't say it back.
Yes. He chose a story that exhibited the characteristics that people are shying away from in the game of Survivor. Yes.
Now, the flip side of that, though, is that he did bring it up in the context of, did I do something wrong? I'm feeling anxiety about having made that decision. And so by revealing that vulnerability about it, does really represent sharing the actual feelings that he's having, making it a sincere anecdote rather than a put on.
Yes, I agree that it was a sincere anecdote. I just found it amusing that the anecdote resulted in painting him in the light in which he was trying to get himself out of.
Yeah. Now that said, I thought
You
it
picked the right
was
person to tell to, though.
yeah. Jeremy seemed both sympathetic and receptive to having that conversation, and I like the idea of those two maybe being allies. You know, we didn't really see any discussion of them being official alliance or anything, but I kind of liked the idea of those two getting together.
Yeah, what I liked was that Jeremy was kind of he was like, because what Spencer's story did was exactly what he intended. Like, it's not like Jeremy's like, that guy, I'm going to vote with him. What he said was, that's a good kid. I like that kid. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get rid of him, but I like that kid. But which is exactly the opposite of the way that Spencer normally plays. Like, this was just a seed, because now he has somebody who has just sort of a genuine like for him. It's not like he went to Jeremy and discussed strategy and here's all, and then Jeremy says, yeah, I want to play with that guy because he knows the right moves to make. You don't leave a conversation like that and be like, I want to play with that guy to the end because of the nature of the game. And that's the people who can balance the two, and that's what Spencer has identified and he's trying to feel his way through, is that when you can feel like a real person and people are like drawn to you, this is what Boston Rob does. Like Boston Rob makes people feel not just like he knows the strategy of the game, but he makes them feel like they're his friend.
Yeah. I mean, that was the secret weapon in his whole thing, is that every single person around him thought that it was them and him. It's like, oh yeah, I know that everyone else is just part of the alliance, but him and me, that's the real thing. And every single person thought that was true for them.
Right. And the way that he did that is what has made it so hard to copy, is that he didn't start every relationship like that. He started it the way Spencer just started it. He had conversation with people. He was friendly with them. He got to know them and made them kind of feel an affinity towards him until it was time to move them into a strategic position. And the balance between the two of telling real stories and getting people to like you as a real person and listening to their stories versus just only talking the strategy. Like, you have to lay that groundwork and getting people that's how people trust you. People don't trust you because you have the best strategic mind. People trust you because they have an affinity to you as a person, and you've shared vulnerabilities with them, and they've shared vulnerabilities back with you. That's where the trust comes. And that's what Boston Rob is phenomenal at, that no one else has ever been. Like, you can draw up his play in a textbook or whatever, and you could hand that to most people. They can't do that roadmap because he got the people to like him and trust him and believe him.
Yeah,
before he did all of the moves.
Right. Yeah. If you demonstrate that you're good at strategy first, that just makes them say, oh, that guy's a player and we better get rid of him. He knows what he's doing.
Right. And that's what made it even better, is that people went into it already knowing he was good at strategy.
Yeah.
And he left that out of it and just just got to know people for real and made that all kind of go away for a little bit and then brought it in when he needed it.
Well, he had that charisma that made everybody feel lucky that he was paying attention to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But some of that is stories like what Spencer was telling Jeremy. Like Boston would do something like that. He would tell a true, heartfelt story to somebody and listen to their advice, or vice versa, listen to a heartfelt story from someone and give his advice, independent of the game. That's part of how his charisma worked, So anyway, I like that Spencer did it. I like that there was no immediate payoff, but I think there will be, because Jeremy's starting to be like, if the situation in the game, this is exactly what you want people to say. If the game situation plays out where it makes sense, then yeah, that's a guy I'd like to have around. I'm not saying I'm bringing him along, but if it made sense. And so what happens then is when it comes down to Spencer paints the picture of, here's how it makes sense for me to be with you. And he says, yeah, I like that because I kind of want that. I was looking for a reason to bring you along.
Yeah, exactly. And whenever something might come up where you're in a position of maybe having to lie to someone, if you like them, it makes it that much harder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a much more better situation that Jeremy might come to Spencer and say, "Hey, man, it's not looking good for you. Here's what's going down."
Yeah.
And give him information that he might not be able to extract normally, because people might be able to look at him and say, nope, we're all good, just like we talked about. And then it's a lot harder to do that when you have an affinity for the person,
Yeah. So, meanwhile, over at Encore, they're having a hard time with the rain since they don't have their shelter in near as good a shape yet. And Tasha has more of her upbeat, positive attitude, which I continue to enjoy, basically just saying, everybody's complaining, but it was like this the last time I was on, so it's just round 2. So I liked that. And then, of course, we also can't ignore the nonsense argument between PG and Abby over, are you dry? Are you more dry than me? Are you not dry? How dry are you?
And you found the dry spot. No, I didn't. You did. No. Let's see. You look dry. I don't look dry.
Yeah. And one of the other things that PG talked about in this interview that I listened to is how, at least from her own perspective, she was trying to make nice with Abby. She was trying to be nice, and Abby just had this way of anything PG would say, Abby would take it in the way that it's an insult. Now, this particular example we saw, you could see how if there's already tension, that's like there could be a defensiveness of, hey, you have the dry spot, immediately turns into, how come you have the dry spot and I don't? You don't deserve it. You should leave. You know what I mean? And even though that's not what she said, it's easy to understand how that translation could happen. But what PG said is that, like, even just like ordinary conversations, somehow she would try to be nice and it would end up being interpreted like it was mean. And then she also gave an example of, like, coming back from the game, is that apparently there had been some back and forth on Twitter or something between them, and Abby was mad because she thought PG was saying bad things about her, and PG just said, and she's talking to the Dalton Ross in this podcast interview now, and she's saying, I just wanted her to stop talking to me. So what I tweeted at her was, look, Abby, I really respect you and I want to have you as a friend rather than us arguing. And then all of a sudden, Abby was all about them being best friends. And that just reinforced to PG that she sees how the others feel like they can control her because they say something nice to her and immediately get an overwhelmingly positive response, which makes them think, oh, I've got this. I've got it wrapped around my finger. And so because, if she doesn't currently have her animosity pointed at you, it's very easy to superficially and in the immediate moment make her seem to be really happy and totally on board with being best friends, which is interesting. So in any case, Tasha observes, these two seem to be arguing about stupid stuff. Maybe that's an opportunity. She's also, this is where she's making the case that about what we talked about earlier, which is, okay, we're in the minority here, but we're in the majority in the other tribes. And then so pitching to Abby, you could come along back with us. And I couldn't help but, I don't know, I had mixed feelings because on the one hand, between PG and Abby, I think Abby is the one that would be more receptive to that argument. But I was also, you got to be wary of, I feel like you want to just try to minimize any interaction you have with her in any way because you never know what's going to suddenly set her off. Especially once PG is gone, she'll have to find someone else to be mad at. But in any case, it certainly got the job done for this episode. So meanwhile, over at Bion, Stephen is still focused on the idol, still thinking about it and talking about it a lot. But that does seem to also kind of inspire everybody on the tribe to spend some time looking. And it wasn't 100% clear, I think probably because it wasn't clear in individual's mind, is this the tribe looking together? Or is this each individual looking for themselves? And I think it might have been a case where everybody kind of says, sure, we're all looking together. But you go look over there, and I'll go look over here. Yeah. Whoops, didn't find it. Gosh, what a bummer.
Yeah. That is what it felt like, yes.
Yeah. But so how fun, though, that Jeremy, having been one of the people who kind of was one of the people implying that this was like a group effort, he finds the clue, and it does not even cross his mind to tell anybody else about it. It's just like, of course not. Why would I do that?
Why? No.
Yeah. And so Jeremy is a fun person to have found it. And that takes us to the challenge, which it's interesting that just as far as trivia is concerned, that having this be a repeat challenge for Spencer, Cass, and Tasha, who were all three on the same tribe, which got third place that time, now each of them on, separated in one each in the three current tribes. So, which meant that at least one of them is going to get third place a second time.
It did mean that.
Yeah. Now, so Jeremy got the idol, good for him. But one of the things that I had a couple of thoughts about that when I saw it. First of all, it seemed like it was in a place that would have been very easy for someone who didn't have the clue to just spot that, hey, what's this thing? It was in a very prominent place. It didn't seem like it was in a place where you would have had to lean under something or to see an unusual angle, because it was actually attached to the chest that they're loading up into their little cart thing. So it seems like a very, if Jeremy had just failed to be the first person to get to that spot, someone else could have just seen it there. But in any case, that, maybe just puts more of the impetus on him to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, one thing I was wondering, which I think I know the answer to, but I don't think, if someone doesn't have a clue, do you think they place an idol in the challenge?
I had that was actually my other note. So I had the same question. But I think you and I are on the same page that probably they only put it there if someone has a clue.
That's what I feel like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what they don't want is people fucking around in the challenge,
mm-hmm.
Once enough people know this exists, screwing around, searching for things.
Right.
As opposed to doing the challenge. So you have to know that a clue has been found and there is in fact one placed.
Yeah. Well, and so I think one of the best pieces of evidence to support that reading is that there did not seem to be hidden idols on the other two tribes' chests.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
But one thing that would be an interesting bit of information to have for, I guess Kelly Wentworth is the only one that would be in a position of having this at this point, is to anyone who knows that that's how the idols are being done this season could potentially be on the lookout for an idol, even if they don't have the clue. You know what I mean? Even they have had their respective idols, but there could still be another out there, for example, right?
Right. But what I think Kelly and both Kelly and Jeremy know is that without the clue, it's pretty much a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
So think about how hard they had to work having the clue
mm-hmm.
to not have people realize they were going for an idol.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were trying to look when you didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't mean you can't have your radar on a little bit, just in case.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what
certainly, if nothing else, to be watching to see if someone else seems to be. Yeah,
exactly. That's more where you should be like on is someone else acting odd. And it so far it's always been in the final stage of the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people are sort of together in a group and you can dart off and get it.
Yeah.
It's never been while you're supposed to be like physically like moving something through.
Right.
So when you're in that group, you should kind of be like, is everybody here?
Yeah. And I think having now seen two people successfully get it without being detected, what I'm looking for is we want to see someone get busted now.
Yes.
But we'll see. We will see. So the Takeo tribe was the first to get to the puzzle by a pretty big stretch. The three pairs that started the puzzle, at least, were Joe and Cass, Monica and Spencer, and then Tasha and PG, although there were several swap outs over the course of the challenge. But Takeo, with their big lead, got first place. And then Bayon, which was the next tribe to get to start the puzzle, was also the next tribe to finish it. But of course, now we've got a rat. That I had to rewind this and watch it again because I couldn't figure out what was actually happening the first time, and I think that's kind of how it must have felt at the time. But what seems to have happened, in case anyone else had a hard time following it, is that Jeff Varner was trying to whisper. What we see on screen is that he seems to be mouthing Kimmy and Monica, and he is mouthing that to Kelly Wigglesworth. So it's not 100% clear if he's telling her to work with them or to target them. But, you know, based on what we saw anyway. But, of course, Tasha sees this intra-tribe or inter-tribe communication happening, and no, we've got a rat, and she jumps in between, and it was a gutsy thing to do because just, you know, any kind of a big thing, like, you know, for example, if everyone else kind of took his side in that could really put a target on her back, right?
Yep.
But he made pretty quick work of ensuring that wouldn't happen. By getting super defensive and blowing up everybody else's game. We're just saying, well, and it was like like a controlled demolition building implosion, meaning he is completely lashing out and every blow hits himself. Well, I made a deal with Andrew, and then he turns around and makes a deal with PG, and then Wu's standing right there. What? You making a deal with Andrew? What was that? Nobody's making a deal with me.
Yeah. It's probably one of the most, like, that moment was one of my most favorite Wu moments because it was like one of his most insightful, like where he, you know, normally he's just kind of like has that weird look on his face and you know he's thinking more than he looks, but this he didn't have that look on his face. He was just downright like, what are you talking about? Wait a minute.
Yeah. It reminds me of Stick to the Plan from Keith before. Just this sudden thing of like, okay, Jeff, you got called out for trying to talk to Kelly. You could have just said, sorry guys, my bad. But instead, you made it 100 times worse in your attempted defense. And now it seems at that point like it's a guarantee that he's going to go, except that somehow that doesn't happen. And I'm not sure he deserves any credit whatsoever for it not going that way. Maybe a little, just in the sense that obviously he would have been working in that direction, but it mostly seems to have happened around him that he was no longer considered the target rather than anything he did to save himself. But yeah, that was kind of an amazing exchange. And it really, so Andrew Savage and Tasha had already both been, plotting how to splinter the tribe. And then it seemed like, wow, now we've got a perfect target. And yet he ends up still not being the one. Like, so the three people on the tribe who seemed like they should have been the ones most considered ended up being the ones that were most safe in the final vote.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Wu, I mean, I think Wu seemed less safe only just by virtue of he had taken PG's side and didn't see coming that she was getting voted out.
Yeah, but he wasn't going to make any votes.
Yeah. But in any case, this was so they get back to camp. Savage, I gather he likes to be called Savage is what I've read. So he is now lobbying to PG and Wu. Look, I'm going to be a better asset to the tribe, both at camp and in challenges than Jeff Varner is, and all that. And so Wu, despite having earlier said that they should stick to the plan and not do anything crazy and just do the numbers, now seems convinced. But it may well be because he's pissed at Jeff Varner now. So PG, though, is at this point concerned about, I don't know if that's a good enough reason to give up this strong 4-2 numbers alliance, which again, it's like yet another example of someone saying the right thing and then changing their mind later to crazy stuff. Although, I don't know, wanting to get out Abby isn't so much crazy as it is an emotionally based decision rather than strategic.
Yeah.
And then, so in the meantime, Abby is also interested in getting out Jeff Varner, but it's more just about like, oh, sure, he seems like someone to get out because I've already decided that I'm going to vote with Savage and Tasha. And she's wary of trusting Wu or PG, and then just basically straight up tells PG, yeah, I've decided I'm voting with them. That's just all there is to it. And so
that was an amazing moment.
Yeah. Which is tricky because it just automatically means that now, unless they change something else up, the best they can do is a tie. And so
get rid of Varner, like they could have.
Well, yeah, but if she doesn't want it just means that there's no way to preserve the 4-2 thing. So That's just out the window because she's already just said, nope, that won't happen. So It means they have to consider alternate options.
Right.
But you're right, though. If they had all just collectively decided to get rid of Varner, then it still would have been a 3-2. They could have maybe made that happen. But in the meantime, PG is now mad enough at Abby that she wants to target her rather than give up Jeff. And what she said in the interview is, although certainly there was an emotional component to wanting Abby gone, there was also just an element of, even though Jeff Varner had screwed up, there was a better chance of getting him back on their side and being a solid ally, better chance of that happening than with Abby.
The reality is he wasn't not a solid ally with them. He was that, and that's what his problem was, is he was just being their mouthpiece as a group to the other tribe. Like, it's not that he was like anti-PG and Wu. He was just pro working with people he was still connected with.
Well, and being a bad ally in the sense of doing it so clumsily that it makes everybody mad.
Yes, he was a bad ally in that sense, but not because he was they should distrust. Yeah.
So in that sense, that's why she was thinking, if we can get rid of Abby instead of Jeff Varner, that would be better from her perspective. But of course, now that she tells Andrew and Tasha that, which at this point, I am just here with my jaw on the floor of how Andrew and Tasha went from being the targets to being the ones that everybody is lobbying.
Right, to the swing votes in the good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the two of them kind of occasionally taking each other aside and just like, so how did this happen? I mean, I feel like this is what we were hoping for, but we kind of thought it was a lost cause, and yet here we've succeeded somehow. But in any case, once Abby hears from Savage that PG is lobbying for her, and now she says, nope, now we don't want to vote for Jeff anymore. Now we want to vote for PG. And so it's clear that the two of them are going to be voting for each other, and now what will everybody else do? And so Tasha's argument either way is saying, well, Abby's unpredictable and PG is indecisive. What did you think about that particular read?
I mean, I think that's fair. Like, and maybe that's not PG's, overall personality, but what she displayed to them was indecisiveness. Like, she had one way she wanted to go, and then when she heard something different, then they were basically saying she's emotional without displaying emotion. She had an emotional reaction to the situation, which made her go down a different course. And that doesn't, that's not someone we want to be aligned with. Mm-hmm. And going back, like, when you read and try to remember, like, PG's first season, like, she did not bond with a lot of people. And I mean, people found her somewhat abrasive and things like that in her first season. Mm-hmm. This is not, she's just like everybody else. Like, they haven't played it up as much because it's not as interesting of a returning trait. But exactly what's happening to her now is very similar to what her behaviors in her first season. According to, like, again, what I'm trying to remember and what I read. I don't want to say that's definitive, but that's kind of what happened with her, is that she could never really bond in with anybody, and people kind of found her indecisive, somewhat abrasive, like that. That's the deal. So, and as far as Abby, I mean, I think Tasha accurately described Abby.
Yeah. I think my first reaction was that PG didn't strike me as being indecisive, but I agree from Tasha and Savage's perspective, like, what have they seen of her? What they've seen, at least in this last couple of days, is going from wanting to target Savage and Tasha to wanting to target Jeff Varner to now wanting to target Abby. And it seems like it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think in this context, it's largely because PG kind of ended up with no really great options once Abby had definitively declared her intentions that way.
Right.
So in any case, at Tribal Council, Jeff Varner talks about his whole thing at the challenge. He's trying to send a personal message to someone he cares about on the other tribe, implying that it wasn't actually strategic, which is ridiculous, but whatever. Then he says it was a meltdown that he does not remember, which
that was the worst part of it.
See, that's the sort of thing that even if that's true, that's not what you should say. Like, I could imagine it being true. Like, they're exhausted from this challenge. It's probably hot out. Maybe you're tired and hungry and you're not quite thinking clearly. And you kind of go on autopilot for a little while there. And then you kind of recover later. What did I just do? Like, I could imagine that being true. And yet, even if that is true, that's not what you should say.
No.
Because that's like telling everybody, you guys cannot depend on me to act rationally. I will sometimes just let my mouth, run and say everybody's secrets without warning, which I will now proceed to do again.
Yes.
So once again, everyone's talking about him, and then him being, a target for that. And then he kind of says, and yet I might still make it out of this tribal council with no votes, because here's exactly what's happening with everybody. And everyone's just like, okay, fine.
That is a strategy, I guess.
Yeah. He is, yeah. He's fun to watch.
He is.
So, although I'm certainly biased by liking PG better than Abby to begin with, I felt like I bought PG's argument in her own defense better than I bought Abby's. But I think what decided everybody is what we talked about earlier, which is the others, including, like, especially Jeff Varner, I think they can control Abby. They think that they can bring her along. It's like what we talked about last time. As long as they are the one that can tolerate her better than the others, they can use her and then get rid of her whenever they need to.
And honestly, this was reinforcing to that. Because PG didn't need to draw a line against her. Like, it's not like Abby was targeting PG. PG went after Abby, and that's what turned it all up.
Yeah.
You know, because she couldn't tolerate her anymore. She got tired of it.
Yeah.
So that's how it's been going. That's why I joked, like, Abby's in control of the game, because whoever can't tolerate her anymore and tries to make the move is the one that goes.
Yep. You know? Yeah, so it's yeah. I am just really interested because my prediction, though, is that with PG gone, Abby will just find someone new to be mad at.
Yes.
I think that's just how she interacts with the world, is that she needs someone to be against because it validates her worldview that she is mistreated.
Yes.
But you know, this was another example where when the PG was voted out, it said #blindside, and I typed in my notes #bullshit. But in fairness to the show, this time PG did go on to say in her final words that she actually thought that it was going to go the other way and was surprised. It's still not a blindside; it's just a surprise, but it's better than there have been in some cases.
Yeah. The only blind side in this episode that could have happened would have been Wu.
Yeah.
Like, if we had all that happen and then just everybody said, you know what, that guy's not involved, let's get rid of him. You know, that would have been a blind side.
But when like, as we've said so many times, when every single discussion says, well, it's going to be A or B, it's going to be A or B, just because you expected A and it turned out to be B, that's not a blind side because you looked at both of them and you just predicted wrong. A blind side is when you think, you know, it's going to be A or B, and then it comes in C, and it's like, what? C? I didn't even look at C.
Yeah, that's a blind side. Yeah, looking at A or B, and C hit me.
But this is one of those things where it's like, maybe as language evolves, and at a certain point, you just have to accept common usage as a valid. And so blindside means surprised. Anyway, Wu was surprised. He did not see that coming. And how horrible and horrifying and awful was it? He's sitting there surprised, shocked, bummed, and then Abby kind of turns to him with this passive-aggressive laugh and it's like, second time you wrote down my name. And it's just like, that's like the last shot of a horror movie.
Yes. That's what that
like,
felt
oh
like.
no!
That felt like. I was thinking the same thing. Horror movie.
So he may well be the next target for her animosity. We'll see. But yeah, that was just like, I felt so bad for him in that moment. It was just like, oh God. Yeah. So we'll see. Abby is certainly making things interesting, but she does still get under my nerves, on my nerves, not to be under my skin, on my nerves.
Yep.
Yeah. Alongside my muscle. I don't know. Never mind. So next time we get Misery at Encore, and everybody is shocked. And then, of course, another implication that there's going to be injuries in the challenge, but very little specifics. So my guess is that it's just a rough challenge where everybody's going, ow, ow, and not an actual intervention. Just because usually I feel like when someone really gets injured and taken out of the game, or even when there's any question of it, they include the shot in the preview of like medical.
Yeah.
Or stop the challenge or whatever. And I don't think they said that this time.
No, I think they just wanted to make it seem more dramatic than it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So PG's final words, she says she was surprised, and then it just pretty much finishes with, good luck with Abby. She's a handful. And I do find that I am less irritated with Abby the more I think of her like an obstacle rather than a person, which is not great, but it's a little bit like that thunderstorm analogy I had earlier. It's less like she's another player and more like just one of the challenges that the players have to navigate, like having to find food and make fire and build a shelter and deal with Abby. So anyway.
I understand that feeling. Yeah. I can empathize with that. Not in the dealing with Abby, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and obviously there's two different Abbys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. I'm not going to elaborate though. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. I mean, there's a part of me that also kind of wants to remind myself how I did feel bad for her last time, and without wanting to absolve her of her own responsibility to act in a way that allows her positive social interactions with people. At the same time, I can only imagine that the same things that I find irritating about her probably cause her difficulty in normal life too. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to fix for someone, even if they're aware of it. And it's hard to deal with. So she is a human being with her own thoughts and feelings, and I shouldn't ignore that, even at the same time that I think I would probably not want to hang out. All right. We will see what happens next time on Survivor Second Chance.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching. You can find all of this stuff podcast related at christianaellis.com. Talk to you later.